Good evening. We will call the Legislative Board meeting of December 10th to order. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Ms. Mulhern. Ms. Mulhern, you will provide the statement of acknowledgement in honor of indigenous and diverse communities.
Thank you, Ms. Henry. We begin this meeting with acknowledgement of and honor for the many legacies that have impacted our community, particularly those buried over time. Acknowledging truth is critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. Cheltenham Township stands with the Lenapehoking, the ancestral homeland of the Lenni Lenape civilization. There, people were and still are caretakers of this land and its rivers, and their legacy continues. We pay respect to their elders past and present. Our community owes its existence and vitality to generations from around the world who contributed their hopes, dreams, and energy to making the history that led to this moment. Some were brought here against their will, some were drawn to leave their distant homes in the hope of a better life, and some have lived on this land for more generations than can be counted. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together. As a school district committed to fostering intellectual curiosity and discourse in service of social justice, join us in uncovering such truths.
Thank you, Ms. Mulhern. Ms. Harding will provide the roll call.
Thank you. Ms. Blitzstein?
Ms. Blitzstein is not present tonight.
Mr. Burdell-Williams?
Present.
Mr. Epps?
Present.
Ms. Henry?
Present.
Ms. Lohman?
Present.
Ms. Mulhern?
Present.
Ms. Murphy?
Ms. Murphy is not present tonight.
Mr. Schultz?
Present.
And Dr. Whiting?
Present.
Thank you. That concludes the roll call.
Thank you, Ms. Harding. We will have public comments on agenda items only. If Mr. Kaufman, let me know if there is anyone online that has raised a hand. Okay. We will move on to recognitions provided by the principal at Cedarbrook, middle school.
Good evening. Thank you. All right, thank you. So tonight we have some of our artwork from Cedarbrook Middle School, and it's not just from Mr. McShay's classroom. We also have artwork that comes from Mr. Rose's classroom. If you know, Mr. Rose is our STEM teacher. And STEM, in this project, is a little bit of STEAM, science, technology, engineering, art, and math. So over on this side, we have examples of art from our Art 1, Art 2, and Advanced Art History class. The combined curriculum is designed to encourage creative confidence in our scholars, and it promotes both personal growth and academic success during an important time of learning, awareness, and development. From the left, by the Cedarbrook sign, we have examples of lighthouse landscapes, warm, cool, abstract villages, color wheel animals, and monochromatic still life projects from our color theory unit. In that unit, scholars also study various color combinations and the atmosphere that they create, such as primary, complementary, tertiary, and monochromatic. On the back wall, where we have our examples of the STEM, and then on the other side, we have our 7th grade scholars in which they were doing El Dia de Muerto. So for our prism portraits, so displayed there are samples of prism portraits, and that's again what Mr. Rose did in the back here. Our 7th grade scholars at Cedarbrook, they're currently engaged in for STEAM class. For that project, scholars learn to use Adobe Illustrator to create geometric designs of themselves. So there you have a full description and requirements of the projects, which are posted, so you can see the objective that's attached to it, as well as just the different steps scholars had to take in order to get through the project. So the project does aim to teach art principles, mathematical concepts, and industry standard design software. So originally it was going to be done with Google Drawing and Pixlr, but we had an opportunity, thanks to Mr. Barone, which we're able to use some Adobe products So they came in, they quickly shifted where we could actually get on there and use some more, I'm gonna say, more rigorous software, so we can kind of just have our scholars learn and grow and have some more real world experiences with using some of the software that's used out there today. So right now, scholars are about 60 to 70% complete with their projects and with the math integration, other biographies, and as soon as they are done completing it, then we'll be able to post those and have those hanging around our school. So the objective of that assignment was to create a portrait of themselves using polygons, write an autobiography, calculate the area of the polygons in a portrait, and combine the artwork, the writing, and the math skills with design software. So the math piece, I think, is very important. Mr. Rose is a certified art, science, and math teacher, and he really is just fabulous with project-based learning. So that is that. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Metcalfe, and the artwork is absolutely beautiful.
Now, the video you're going to see, it's about 4.5, 5 minutes long, somewhere around that time. It really, we just started our school year. We have millions of pictures. This was very difficult, especially having millions of pictures this early on. But we try to do our best to make sure we can kind of show and demonstrate just almost every aspect of Cedarbrook. So enjoy.
must say, it's probably the first time I heard Rob bass, It Takes Two, and I didn't dance. I couldn't dance up here, but it was very hard to keep still. Thank you, Mr. Metcalfe.
You're welcome.
Next, we have our solicitor's report. Mr. Diazio.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. The board has not met in executive session since the last board meeting, so there is no executive session to announce this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diazio. Dr. Scriven will provide the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening. It's always my honor and privilege to do this monthly report. And the theme is a common theme: continuous improvement, a roadmap for progress. Every month, I just take an opportunity to unpack so that it is memorialized what the vision and mission is for the district around continuous improvement, which really, from my perspective, is our why. And I want to make sure I'm aligned with the slides. You can go to the next slide, please. So it is the path to educational excellence, and each and every year we are striving to get better, each and every day, each and every week, each and every month. I'm very proud of the work that we see in our schools. Principal Metcalfe, I wish you kind of had the opportunity to unpack the meaning behind some of the slides, right? As a board, we could definitely see that there is a lot happening at Cedarbrook Middle. Especially would have liked you to unpack, and it's okay, I'll bring you back, or you can bring some of the kids, the new concept of lunch and learn that you're doing and how that is going. I saw kids doing some culinary work and other opportunities that they're being exposed to. We, as a district, are really understanding that when we talk about multiple data and multiple measures and multiple ways of assessing student success, it's not just in an assessment or a test score. And at the middle, last week we saw 5-6 EP, some of the great things and how the work is transferring to actionable data incrementally, which is moving us the right direction. Next slide. So the heart of continuous improvement, why we must always improve. So this is year 4, but every year we're unpacking, we're learning, we're building capacity, we're strengthening systems, we're strengthening structures, we're aligning our work, we're being reflective, we're getting multiple perspectives in terms of surveys and stakeholder groups to get their feedback. And for me, I want this to be sustainable, and that's the key. So when I'm gone, some of the programmatic pieces that we put in place, they should continue regardless of who's sitting in this seat. And that's really the goal to this work. Next slide, please. So this is straight out of our Pennsylvania Department of Education. It is the format that they follow for continuous improvement, and it's done in 6 stages. It's set, assess, create, implement, monitor, and adjust. And I want to just relate that real quick to the work that we are currently doing within our district. Next slide, please. So when we look at stage 1, I've combined kind of set and assess and understanding our current state. We spend a lot of time, and we'll do that again this spring, with really taking a deep root cause analysis and comprehensive needs assessment as we look at multiple data points to assess where we're doing things well, where we have gaps, and subsequently, what are our growth spots and areas for improvement. And always trying to get better at aligning this to our strategic plan. So we have very clear, measurable, actionable goals. Our principals, through their PAETEP, which is the evaluation system that we use for our principals, have come up with very concrete goals as they've looked at their data and have specifically identified where they want to see intentional growth. We've also, throughout the year, engaged not just teachers, but if I would use Mrs. Savage as an example, just with the calendar process, the parent voice, CIPD, which is a cross-pollination of faculty and staff. We want feedback. We're not trying to do this in isolation, and we understand the importance of collaboration. We're very intentional around the areas that we have prioritized. We had a meeting earlier with the board where in January we will be giving them a very, very transparent report on where we are thus far on the implementation of year 2 of our strategic plan. And that's going to be exciting. We will probably post that. I think that's something that we need to celebrate with the community as well, or use that as a metric to keep them informed. Next slide, please. As we try to frame this visually, Mrs. Savage has spent a lot of time working with the team on the comprehensive needs assessment. I believe there was a report in our most ed affairs on what that timeline and what that process looks like. The comprehensive needs assessment kind of serves as our overarching North Star or roadmap. And then we have a strategic plan, which drills us down and makes it even more finite. And then we have school improvement plans that take it down to the school level. And we've empowered our principals through their instructional leadership teams to build capacity so that we can see the transference of those best practices in action each and every day through our instructional processes when we're touching students directly. Next slide, please. When we talk about create and implement, one thing that we've been pushed by you, the board, to be a little more conscientious of is just the alignment of resources and showing how those resources are definitely touching students directly, whether it be through the curriculum, whether it be through technology or programs that we are using. And I'm looking forward to just unpacking. Mrs. Savage shared with me the 70+ technological programs that we currently have within our district, which drive instruction each and every day. And I want that to make sense for you guys as a board. We're really focusing on building this as a theory of action where you can see it's cyclical. So my goal is, as we continue to move forward, and I'll use Portrait of a Graduate just as an example, there's a lot of work that we're going to be doing so that we see a very consistent through line of what the pathways for our students look like K through 12. I don't want that to be left to chance. I want parents to have a clear understanding of what the different options are for their children, and how are we not barriers in the process. And I'm seeing some places where we will have to make some adjustments where potentially there's some gatekeeping that's going on, and there's some hard conversations we're going to have, just for instance, in the area of mathematics. When do we decide that students need to take Algebra 1 and stop kind of delineating multiple pathways that a child, because that pathway sets a student on a different trajectory. And that's the kind of work and the kind of conversations we're looking at as we're backwardly mapping from grade 12 down to kindergarten. Next slide, please. I've said this in the past, and this, when I talk about continuous improvement and enhancement, the professional development, the PLC process, how we are equipping our faculty and staff with the toolkit that they need. This is ongoing. We're getting constant feedback. We're asking critical or essential questions with how are we doing in this process. And we are making adjustments as we move through the year. We're actually trying to give more autonomy to our principals to lead the work, because they are the ones that know their faculty and staff, their buildings the best, and know what needs to happen in order for the goals that they've set for themselves to come to fruition. Communication. This is what I'm doing right here, right now, is I'm keeping in front of the board, I'm keeping in front of the community what I as superintendent value most, and that's instruction. That's a culture of continuous improvement and reflection that is never changing, and we are trying to create a climate where, from a mindset standpoint, we are always doing what's in the best interest of students and not necessarily what's in our own best interest as adults. Next slide, please. Monitor and plan. So using the data is critical. We can't get away from the data, but we do not use it as a hammer. You always hear me say that. We use it as a flashlight. It shines light on where we're doing well. And to be quite honest with you, it brings light to what changes at central office we need to make as we're looking at curriculum, as we're looking at scope and sequences, as we're looking at common assessments, as we're looking at tools that we're currently using to help us manage and drive our work. We're recognizing that there will be additional adjustments that we will have to make to be more efficient and effective at the goals that we're trying to accomplish. The constant monitoring happens weekly with principals, with their teachers. They're having data-led conversations where teachers are unpacking where our students are doing well as they're going through the process of formative assessments, which are happening each and every day, summative assessments, and just really making critical decisions with how we use when, how do we use our intervention periods, how are we planning. And as they're continuously hearing this and knowing that this is a high priority for me, I'm hoping that we see that transference, and I can't wait until the time where we're actually able to push into classrooms across schools and do peer reviews of one another, which are not evaluative, but help to inform those best practices that are meeting with the most success. Next slide, please. So when we talk about the plan aspect, I've pretty much hit that. Every principal, as you guys have been witnessed, just recently we did secondary, I think at last ed, and you see the very clear, the very structured action steps that they have put in place. Those are not sitting on any of their shelves. They are monitoring that every week. I love some of the war rooms. I say, maybe that's not a word I should use, but old school, when we talk about the data walls, is really what I'm referencing, where a school has a snapshot of how students are doing within their buildings. You guys have visits that are coming up. I would ask you to ask principals to take you through some of those spaces where they're having those rich conversations around what their data looks like and some of the actionable steps that they're taking to continue to move it. Next slide, please. This whole mid-year reflection, as I alluded to earlier, we will be having a mid-year reflection as a collective board. I will also be having a mid-year reflection with each principal, along with Mrs. Savage and team, to kind of level set and calibrate how we're doing with meeting progress towards those set goals. Like you do not want to have an aha moment with me in terms of knowing where things stand. I cannot afford to have an aha moment with any of the principals. We need to know what is working, what adjustments need to be made, and are there additional supports that need to be pushed in. Next slide, please. So on this, it's just continuous improvement is a journey. And I want it to be something that as a district we embrace. I want it to be something that we opt into because we can only get better if we're working collaboratively with the collective intellect that each individual brings to the table. You've heard me on numerous occasions talking about the breaking of silos. That's huge. And I feel that every month we're getting a little closer to that as we continue to really unpack the work. And collaboration definitely is the key. Next slide, please. So I just want a commitment to growth. I'm reflective. I've always been reflective. I take constructive criticism well. And I want individuals to know that this is a trusted environment from a relational standpoint where we can have courageous conversations, where we're going to really start holding folks accountable for what needs to happen in each and every classroom, but that I recognize it's not going to happen overnight. But as long as I can see that incremental growth and that these structures are not just words and are actually being put into action, then I know that we're moving a direction which will be in the best interest of our community as a whole. And we do not have to hit the next slide because I know we do not do questions or discussions on this, but I look forward to those on January 11th when we meet as a team. And that brings closure to my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Scriven. We will move to our committee reports, beginning with Mr. Schultz, who will provide the financial affairs update.
The Financial Affairs Committee met on December 3rd in the Administration Building with a Zoom option. Following roll call and approval of minutes, we received a presentation of the interim financial reports, and then a presentation around action items which are listed on tonight's agenda, which include an opt-out resolution for the Act 1 and the approval of our portion of the Eastern budget. One thing to note around the opt-out resolution, which I will also mention when we vote on it, this is not determining what the tax rate would be in the next budget cycle, but rather it is our a resolution that would limit the rate that we could increase once that budget process concludes in June. So just want to be clear, it says 4.7%. That is the Act 1 index for Cheltenham Township. It is not saying that that is what the tax increase would be. The Eastern budget is what, just want to highlight that as well. That is a function of not just the Eastern Center for Arts and Technology's operation budget needs, but also a reflection of how many of our students attend. So there is a slight increase that's reflected in tonight's budget, but that is because we have more students benefiting from the services of Eastern. The final, this was part of the Act 1 conversation, but we got an update regarding some considerations for future upcoming budget processes. And the big highlight for me was we have a first look around healthcare expenses. which were anticipated to be closer to 7%, but end up being more like 1%, which is a boon for our community. And the next Financial Affairs Committee meeting will be the first Tuesday of January, which is January 7th, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Dr. Whiting will provide the educational affairs update.
Thank you, Madam President. The Educational Affairs Committee met on November 26, 2024 at 7 p.m. in a hybrid format in room 102 in the Administration Building and virtually via Zoom. The meeting included presentations by Assistant Superintendent Savage, Principal Nelson, Principal Metcalfe, and Principal Hammond. The meeting included an overview of the comprehensive planning process due to the Commonwealth in March 2025. January's Educational Affairs Committee meeting will also include our action plan with specific district goals. The meeting also included a presentation by Principal Nelson at Elkins Park School, where she focused on a new walkthrough process and an emphasis on Tier 2 small group supports to build student skills. In addition, Principal Nelson identified a reduction in disruptive student behavior across the school from the prior year. Principal Metcalfe presented on behalf of Cedarbrook Middle School, where he focused on goals for reducing disruptive behaviors and identifying opportunities for growth amongst the students within the school. Principal Metcalfe linked the work to our strategic plan with an emphasis on opportunities to build trust and skills with individual students within the school through counselor meetings with every student at least twice yearly. Dr. Hammond reported on behalf of Cheltenham High School, where he is focused on building common assessments and launching the multi-tiered system of supports systems within the schools. He also emphasized improving school culture and climate and removing barriers to learning by addressing the social, emotional, and mental well-being needs of students within the school. Finally, Ms. Savage presented 2 potential calendars for consideration, which were developed with feedback from caregivers, administrators, teachers, and other school stakeholders, and highlighted a survey that is available to give feedback on those options. Please take the survey. The next meeting will be Tuesday, December 17th at 7 p.m. in the Administration Building and in hybrid format via Zoom. This concludes my report. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Dr. Whiting. Mr. Burdell Williams will provide an Eastern Center for Arts and Technology update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do not have a full report, but I do want to just share that tonight on the agenda is an action item for the board's consideration to approve the budget that the Eastern Center for Arts and Technology 2025-2026 operating budget that Mr. Schultz alluded to further, and just some detail on that. That total budget is in the amount of $9,067,943. It includes a capital assessment of $1,025,000 for the Cheltenham School District's secondary contribution, which is an increase of $67,000 over last year, or approximately 5%. And in addition to that, a capital assessment of $127,100. The Eastern Center for Arts and Technology will meet tomorrow, December 11th at 8 p.m. And that'll be in a hybrid format.
Thank you, Mr. Burdell Williams. Ms. Lohman will provide the update from the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit.
Thank you, Ms. Henry. The Montgomery County Intermediate Unit Board met on Wednesday, November 20th, 2024 at 6:45 p.m. in person at the MCIU's main offices in Norristown and also over Zoom. Prior to the public meeting, an executive session was held to discuss a property issue and some personnel matters. The meeting started with an MCIU program highlight from the Office of Human Resources from Jack Hurd, who's the Director of HR, and Hannah Messner, who's the IU's Assistant Director of HR. The IU currently has 885 total employees. That does not include 200 other contractors and some other folks. Almost 60% of the IU staff has been hired since January 2022, or 2020, I should say, 2020, due to both growth and attrition. As you can guess from those numbers, the IU is always recruiting for positions including job fairs, open houses, college fairs, social media initiatives, and word of mouth. And the IU is working on providing career growth opportunities for all of these new employees, including an enhanced professional development program for staff who want to get either their bachelor's or their master's degree. Dr. Speaker, the IU's executive director, announced that the IU is in the planning stages of their comprehensive plan for 2025-2028. She showed us some goals and explained that the IU's goals are focused on program growth and development, not student achievement, unlike the member school districts. This was a long meeting, so I'm just gonna kind of skip through. Couple of interesting things. Dr. Brad Landis, who's the IU's assistant executive director, provided an update on 3 consolidated cases that are now in front of the U.S. Supreme Court, which will determine whether the funding mechanism for the Universal Service Fund is constitutional. Why does that matter to us? Because we all of us, pay a fee in our phone bills for the Universal Service Fund, and someone has challenged this fee as unconstitutional. This matters to us because E-rate, which provides federal funds to help schools and libraries and hospitals afford broadband services, currently operates under the Universal Service Fund. No more Universal Service Fund, no more E-rate, no more affordable broadband access. School districts and public libraries obviously will be at quite a bit of a loss, lose a lot of money if the E-rate is found to be unconstitutional, among other entities. So there was some discussion about what that's going to mean for the IU's members if the Supreme Court does in fact find the Universal Service Fund to be unconstitutional. The MCIU board approved a PA SMART grant for Montco Works Now for the period of November 1st, 2024 to October 31st, 2025, which is actually a new award for the Montco Works Now program, which is an interesting program that the IU runs. It serves at-risk youth and young adults who reside in the county who are between the ages of 14 and 24, who face a significant barrier to completing or advancing in education or obtaining employment. PA SMART grants support high-quality STEM and computer science learning and professional development opportunities, and that will be used by the Montco Works Now program to implement some STEM opportunities. One other thing, the board approved a revised Title III budget for the IU. The IU received some Title III funds for early intervention students. As a reminder, Title III is a federally funded program that provides supplemental funds to help English language learners and immigrant students learn English and meet state academic standards. Getting a little bit of money for the early intervention program is a big deal because the IU's preschool early intervention program is not adequately funded by the state. With the state budget that was passed in July, the early intervention program for the preschool early intervention programs that are operated primarily by IUs throughout the state, those programs were flat funded, which is an issue because there's more kids who are now eligible for early intervention. Early intervention is actually a federally required program, and the federal government only gives a small amount of money for it. The state kicks in most of it. So Ms. Edling said that they're kind of in this bind with regard to sort of their funding for their preschool early intervention program. One of the barriers they're facing is that the state legislature doesn't seem to understand that funding either the pre-K Counts program or Head Start or some other pre-K type programs doesn't mean that doesn't translate into funding for the preschool early intervention program. So there's a lot of confusion among state legislators about that. She's talked to folks about that, and they just don't seem to understand that preschool early intervention is a totally separate program from those things. So that was an interesting discussion. Another one thing, the board approved a grant agreement for the Paraeducator Preparation Pathways Program, which Cheltenham School District was the inaugural participant in and will continue to participate in the coming year. So that's exciting. The board approved a whole bunch of other contracted service agreements and trainings. The board will meet again on Wednesday, January 22nd, 2025 at 6:45 p.m. in person at the IU's main office in Norristown and also over Zoom. This ends my report.
Thank you, Ms. Lohman. Mr. Burdell Williams will provide the facilities report update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Facilities Committee met on December 3rd in a hybrid format after roll call and approval of minutes. We received a presentation from Mr. Joshua Swigert that included 3 line items, one for winter preparation, one for FMX preventative maintenance updates, and another for construction updates relative to the large capital projects that we have going on in the district. In terms of winter preparation, we heard an update that the district is all set for us not to have to use any of those things because we won't have any snow this year. But happy to know that we're prepared if in fact someone else around the world needs us to come in and help them. We heard an update around FMX related to our utilization of that software to help with integrating all equipment and descriptions into the system to ensure that each maintenance employee has an accurate overview of each inspection, really to help drive what the board has been, really invested in over my time on the school board, which is maintaining the facilities that we have so they last as long as they can, and they stay new as long as they can. And then for any assets that require replacement that are past their useful life, that we have a plan to address them, as opposed to running them to failure and then deciding at that point in time that it's time for us to take a costly, typically time prohibitive repair. The next update was around the construction projects that we have going on. We did receive an update, I believe, in the November Facilities Committee meeting around the award of a facility improvement grant. That particular facility improvement grant was applied for specific to the partial roof replacement at Cheltenham High School. Currently, the low bid cost for that partial roof replacement was about $4.2 million. $1 million was awarded to us in that facilities improvement grant, and expecting that to cover some parts of the high school, the auditorium, as well as some aging parts of the roof that were replaced in patchwork formats in the past. So looking forward to that. Additionally, there was an update around the CHS Stadium renovation. Just a more of an overview of where we are in real time. There are some expected board actions coming up regarding turf and track vendor approvals that are expected in January. And regarding the other construction updates, there's expected to be updates around the Cedarbrook and Glenside additions coming in the January or February meetings, and currently CSD is expanding on the current proposal regarding the HVAC at the high school to find some more detail in that based on what the previous quotes were aligned with. That is all I have for my report. The Facilities Committee will be meeting again on January 7th prior to the Financial Affairs Committee, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Burdell Williams. Ms. Mulholland, report out on the liaison group.
Thank you, Ms. Henry. The liaison group did not meet since our last meeting, and our next meeting will be on Monday, January 27th. And while I don't have anything new to report, just a reminder to keep following all of the rules and laws around school bus safety. When you see a bus stopping, please stop as well. When you see those flashing lights, we will have 2 weeks in the end of the month where there will not be many school buses on the road. So in January, we will need everyone's help to get back to good practices again. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mulhern. Mr. Epps will provide the policy committee update.
Thank you, Madam President. While the policy committee did not meet since the last legislative meeting, there are some repeat first read policies that folks may notice on the agenda. That's no official action. When we meet again next year, 2025, we will address those policies. I believe that'll be the third week of January. The date escapes me at the moment.
Thank you, Mr. Epson. You're up for the legislative report.
I am, and the legislative committee also has not met. The legislator is in recess until January, and so the legislative committee will reconvene in February after they've met. And so we've continued to be encouraged to figure out what we want, what are some of our priorities and needs, and legislators, even the governors, touring the state and listening right now to see what might they need to address in this upcoming session. And so, again, for us, this is a sort of a moment to do some of those things. And we know school funding is going to be a huge topic of conversation again this upcoming year. We've heard previously that this past year is some form of a down payment, and so with a down payment, that usually comes future payments, and so we'll certainly look out and advocate to ensure that the constitutional duty is met to fairly and adequately provide for schools. And so that ends my report for tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Epps. Can I have a motion to approve the approval of minutes from the November 9th, 19th, and December 3rd, 2024 minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Ms. Mulhern, thank you. Dr. Whiting? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. The minutes are approved. Next, we will move into our consent agenda. And have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Burdell Williams, second. Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Before we go to a vote, I would ask the board if they have any comments. Mr. Burdell Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one comment regarding the budget for the 25-26 school year for the Eastern Center for Arts and Technology. Just wanted to provide some short context around that particular budget and how it works for the community and as well as this board's information. Eastern's budget proposal was informed via input from the strategic planning process and other advisory committees. The strategic plan was developed through stakeholder input around the goals of student success, student recruitment, external partnerships, and operational sustainability. The 2025-2026 budget will be the 5th year for the capital improvement plan, which is a 10-year plan, and was approved by our districts in the 2019-2020 school year. That plan was a culmination of studies of capital needs and funding alternatives to support those needs. The plan focuses on safety, accessibility, and infrastructure upgrades to keep the Eastern Center for Arts and Technology building operational for students. Eastern has strategically used the funding to expand and improve programming for students. And while district contributions to the operating budget are based on average enrollment over the past 3 years, contributions to the capital budget are based on the relative state tax equalization board assessments of each district. As a group, the districts are asked to contribute $1,025,000 to the capital budget in accordance with the pay-as-you-go plan for the assessment schedule, and the budget cap for 25-26 was 4.01 for operating costs, and Eastern's proposed budget includes a 3.85%, which is below that 4.01%. So, doing well at managing there. Lastly, I think it is just important to share what Mr. Schultz alluded to a little bit earlier, is that the increases that the Cheltenham School District has in our assessment are related to an increase in our STEB, but also an increase in the enrollment at the Eastern Center for Arts and Technology over the last 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to take a moment to highlight the list of volunteers who got their materials together, who are going to be giving time to our district and our students, with our very own Mia Blitzstein, who is on that list. Congratulations, Mia. And I also want to highlight Rebecca Condit, who is also one of the leaders of the Special Education Alliance of Cheltenham, who does wonderful work advocating for the needs of our students with disabilities and learning differences across the school district. It is wonderful to have such a robust group of volunteers. We know that it's not an easy process, and thank you all for doing that.
Thank you, Dr. Whiting. Mr. Epps?
Thank you. Wanted to point out, we talk a lot about educators teaching, but a lot of our agendas reflect that educators also learn. And so thank you, Principal Metcalfe, because we saw a great picture of students in the classroom with smiles. It seemed like they were learning in that moment. And one of the things we pass the most is folks going to conferences. And so from connecting MTSS to data analysis, to using best use of our platforms, to learning about the new steel requirements, certainly it doesn't go without notice. we see things at the system level, but also how to prepare for that at the school level in some real ways. So kudos to the district, and hopefully we'll be seeing the rewards of their learning.
Thank you, Mr. Epps. Mr. Schultz?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As foreshadowed, I just, at the time of vote, want to highlight that the opt-out resolution is a commitment to not raise taxes above a certain level. So the Act 1 index for Cheltenham School District this year is 4.7%, and assuming that this resolution passes during the vote, that means that our board will not be able to raise taxes beyond that level come June. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. All right, we'll now take the vote. Mr. Epps? No, go ahead. Okay. Okay. So all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. The consent agenda is approved. Mr. Epps, do you want to speak now, or?
I did. Apologies. It doesn't have anything to do with the agenda. I just noticed a new face and wanted to in the room. And so, yes, you're looking at me now. So, Mr. Matos, Nelson Matos, I know it's not your first day, but welcome to the meetings. I definitely know you've been a great addition to the business management team, and so it's good to see you in the flesh, even in the evening. But thanks.
Thank you. Okay, we will move to public comments on non-agenda items. If you are in the room and you have a comment, you can come up to the podium, which now has a real tall microphone there. So thank you for those that made that happen. Announce your name and where you reside in the district. For the record.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tara Knox. I reside in Elkins Park. How are you all? Good. So this is a question/comment that I spoke with two of the board members off record about a couple of months ago revolving our school trainer at the high school. I believe we have one trainer at the high school on staff. I think he had an intern. I've had the pleasure of being at the school quite a bit because my son plays sports. But I've witnessed a few events where I have seen our trainer having to run across the school or run across the field to treat multiple injuries. One particular incident that occurred at the beginning of the football season was a very serious incident where this young man could have lost his life. And thankfully, we had a parent that was present, that was a nurse, that was able to attend to him very quickly before the trainer was able to get there. Because if you are not aware, during the summertime when the teams are practicing, they're pretty spread out amongst the school. I've talked to a couple of parents about this, and it slipped my mind until my son returned from his indoor track meet today to let me know that the trainer was not there, and that one of the young ladies who attends Eastern was able to tape his ankle and wrist to get ready for this track meet. So I know that one person can't be everywhere at all times. We have a very large student body. We have a very large athletic body. Is it possible that we can get more than one trainer to be available in the school for a safety standpoint, particularly from me witnessing what happened to that young man during the summer, and if that nurse had not been there, what could have happened if the trainer couldn't have gotten there in time? This is not just summer sports, this is in winter sports, this is in spring sports. You could have a baseball game going at the same time as a track meet, same time as a lacrosse game. Wintertime, you could have basketball going at the same time as swimming, same time as indoor track. How do you pick and choose where the trainer goes? And there's always a risk for something to occur. So I'm just hoping that, and I don't know which committee this falls under, but that this can be addressed and that going forward we can try to have at least more than one trainer available for safety reasons. And that's it. I hope you'll have a good, happy holiday. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Coffin, is there anyone online? Okay. So our future meetings are as listed on the agenda for the following month. And I have a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
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 The meeting's adjourned. Thank you all, everyone.